Thursday. But anyway, this is microeconomics. The next, 7 weeks. Those of you who have not had my class before, I'm Kevin Demerit. That's my contacts. I'm at the central bank, and that's my emails as well. There's my cell and my office number. I strongly encourage you to sort of stick me on your WhatsApp, and so that you can reach out to me whenever possible. It's usually easier to reach me on WhatsApp. That way, at least I know that you're trying to get a hold of me, and if I am doing something, I know to get back to you as soon as I have a moment or two. Right. Now, talk very quickly about the syllabus, class times, gradings, all that good stuff. Classes, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays between 6 and 9. Generally, I end about 8:30 because I think you guys are have a break, supposed to have a break at some point, or maybe that's just for in-class classes or in-person classes. But in any case, I generally don't go past 8:30 unless we have something really good and that we have, have our teeth dug into and want to finish before the class ends. So in terms of the grade, you'll get a homework. I will try very hard to get your homework at least every week, not counting, of course, pre-exam times. So you're looking at maybe five homeworks for the semester. Homeworks are worth 30%. I am not very sympathetic to late homework. So I would strongly encourage you, homework is due Tuesday, 6 p.m. every Tuesday. So you get your homework on the Thursday and you hand it in on the Tuesday. Interim exam, 30%, final exam, 40%. Given the very short 6 weeks, 7 weeks that we have to work with, I'm afraid there's no class project this semester. My apologies. August 26th, last day of class, and your final exam is tentatively scheduled for the 31st. What else? Let's see, that's it. I'm sure you're familiar with Zoom etiquette. I don't really need to see your face. I also don't need to see what's going on behind you in your household. I also don't need to hear everything that's going on in your house. So I strongly suggest you keep your audio mute unless we have a discussion going on in class, or you're asking me a question or some intervention with your fellow students. I don't care what you eat or drink, that's entirely up to you. I don't have to hear any noise, I don't have to smell any good food, knock yourself out. All right, let's talk about what we're going to do this semester. Microeconomics is all about the markets. Right? I'm sure you would have done macroeconomics before, at least I sincerely hope that you've done macroeconomics before attempting micro. Macroeconomics is a study of the economy as a whole, looking at the entire country. Micro is not concerned about any of that. Microeconomics is concerned about the markets. And more specifically, this entire semester, we're going to be looking at things from the perspective of the firm. All right, as if we're the one owning the business, we're the one owning the company, we're the one owning the farm, the manufacturer. All right, we're in business. We're not looking at this from the perspective of the consumer because most often when we're talking about how the markets operate, it's how firms make decisions. So one thing we're going to start off the semester with, sort of a review of the stuff that you would have covered in macro, the general demand and supply issues. How do you calculate demand and supply? How do you recognize it? Market equilibrium. What happens when a market is in disequilibrium? And how does it get back to equilibrium? How do we deal with government sticking its nose in the market, government involvement in the market, where government makes choices and how the market reacts to those choices? And then eventually, how do we ever get back to equilibrium. Right? That is going to sort of refresh our understanding of demand and supply and market economics, kind of stuff that we would have covered in your macroeconomics class. Then we can jump into some of the more fun topics. And the first is elasticity. Two of the three major issues that students, high school students, and first year college students seem to have, one is elasticity, two is calculus, and three is matrices or matrix algebra. Well, we're going to cover two out of those three in this class this semester. So you want to put your hands on a good calculator. You know, these days the calculator on your phone will work fine. You know, if you're on some other device, I'm sure the calculator on that device works well enough. Right? But this class is a lot more quantitative, a lot more math involved than your macroeconomics class. Right? And you'll find math is not difficult as long as we follow the rules. So we will take it slow enough that the rules are going to be clear and obvious as long as we follow the rules and you don't get it into your head that, oh, I can't do math because, I don't know, I lack the gene or something. You'll be fine. So elasticity, and elasticity, just as a preview, elasticity is all about responsiveness or sensitivity to price changes. Remember now we said we are looking at this from the perspective of the firm. So as a company, you own a business, you're in the business of making money. So it would be very interesting to you to know how fast or how quickly you can raise your prices before you begin losing customers. We know for a fact that the law of demand says as price goes up, quantity demand is going to fall. So as a businessman, you are a business person, you know for a fact when you raise your price, you're going to lose some amount of customers. That's a given. Some amount of sales are not going to happen because people are going to see the price went up and they're going to suck their teeth and walk out the door or click off your website. Your job then is to say, what kind of product do I have? How sensitive are my customers are to price changes? Because that's going to determine whether or not whether or not I can raise my price, but how quickly I can raise my price to maximize my revenue without losing as many customers. And so elasticity is going to tell us how we would go about doing that. And a lot of it's going to depend on the type of products that you're trying to sell. We can talk about how to calculate elasticity, various different types of elasticity, price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, income elasticity of demand, and cross price elasticity of demand. We're also going to spend a lot of time talking about consumer choice. But we're going to talk about consumers' choice from the perspective of the firm. Because what we're interested in as owners of this business, if we can understand what's going on in the consumer's head, that allows us to make better business choices about our product and our service. If we understand what's driving consumers, what make them choose product A over product B, that's going to help me a lot in my business, making decisions about my business. So when we talk about consumers' choice here, we're going to look at it in terms of how, as the owner of the firm, how we can improve our understanding of consumers' decision making, because that's going to affect our decision making. Which means we're going to need to talk about consumer equilibrium. Consumer equilibrium is all about a consumer maximizing the benefit of their purchases. Excuse me. And in essence, getting the most bang for their buck. So once we understand what is driving consumers, right, then we can understand how we're going to market our product. We're going to talk a lot about costs associated with running our business. There are long-run costs and there are short-run costs. There are different types of profits, whether we're talking about accounting profit or economic profit, and how we go about calculating these costs and making use of those costs to maximize our revenue, maximize our profits, and minimize our costs. Somewhere around the middle of the semester, we'll begin talking about different market structures. There are different types of companies existing in different markets. So certainly we are most familiar with the competitive firm. However, we must be very careful in being able to distinguish a firm competing in a market and a perfectly competitive firm. There are very specific and distinguishable qualities that make a firm a perfectly competitive firm or a firm operating in a perfectly competitive market. Then we can talk about a monopoly. A monopoly tends to be very interesting because they tend to have slightly different perspective in terms of their pricing and their cost structure. So we will see how a monopoly differs very much from a perfectly competitive firm, but also how what they may have in common. We can also talk about things that a monopoly can do that no other firm can do. A monopoly can price discriminate. And yes, it's as bad as it sounds. And also a monopoly, so we'll be interested in what are conditions that allow a monopoly firm to price discriminate, to gouge some customers and make it easier for other customers. We're going to talk about monopolist competition. A monopolistic competition is somewhere between a monopoly and perfectly competitive firm. And then we're going to talk about an oligopoly. An oligopoly is where you have firms operating in the same market, providing the same goods and service, and they may in fact, they are what we call interdependent. A decision I'm going to make about my firm is going to depend on what I think my competitor is doing in my market. Think of it in terms of, say, the commercial banking structure in the Bahamas. You have maybe 6 or 7 commercial banks, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they keep a very close eye on what the other bank is doing, and choices that they're going to make in terms of what products they're going to offer or what price they're going to charge, what fee they're going to impose is going to depend very much on what they see other firms have been able to do, either getting away with it, etc. And then we can get into some of the fun stuff. Like game theory, at least we're going to dip our toe into the market. Game theory is all about competitive competition, if you will. Right? How do I make sure that my firm gets a leg up on my competition? And what do I do if my competition starts playing dirty? Right? How do I keep them on the straight and narrow? And finally, we're going to talk about how you would go about pricing your product. Right? How do you go about including a markup? One of the issues that we find, particularly with sort of single proprietorship mom and pop stores that we see around the Bahamas a lot, is that they charge whatever they want to charge. Whatever is in their back of their mind about the price they're going to charge for a product, that's what they stick on. And then they wonder how come their business is so uneven. Yeah, they got lots of customers one day, no customers the next. You get bad reviews, good reviews. Yeah, you have no idea because there's no consistent methodology, no rationale behind why you're pricing your product the way you're pricing. So we're going to talk about different pricing strategies and how you can optimize these strategies to maximize the revenue coming into your company. And finally, we're going to take everything we've done for probably 6 weeks out of the semester, or call it 5 weeks out of the semester, and for the last 2 weeks, we're going to combine all of them into our company that we're going to create from scratch. We're going to create a product, we're going to market this product, we're going to price this product, we're going to sell this product, we're going to see what the costs associated with this product, and we're going to see if we can make any money for this company. So in a nutshell, that is what we're going to do this semester. It's all about the market. is all about companies and firms, how they approach the market, how they go about pricing their product, what costs, which revenue, which profits. That's how we're going to focus our attention this semester. Like I said, it's a little bit more math intensive than your macro days. You know, those sweet days just cruising through macroeconomics. Yeah, but it won't be as bad as you think. All right. So, any questions before we begin? Either about any administrative stuff or about what we've talked about so far in terms of the kind of issues that we will cover this semester. All right, I see that is, no, I want to say Kelly, but it's not Kelly, it's Kalia.
Yes, it's Kalia. I'm actually calling
Kalia.
from, well, I'm on my phone. I'm heading home. My phone just at 20%, but I think I can make it home before it cuts out.
Hurry, hurry, hurry. All right, I'll see when you drop off. Okay, so some key definitions. Let's start with the microeconomics. It's a study of choices made by individuals, firms, and the government, and how those choices affect the market for goods and services. So microeconomics is all about the study of choices and how those choices affect the markets. Just to remind ourselves, we are being governed by the law of demand and the law of supply in all of our discussions. The law of demand says all other things being equal, you know, that's that ceteris paribus assumption, that Latin term that means all other things being equal, or holding all else constant. We know that as the price of a good or service goes up, quantity demanded of that good or service falls, and as the price of that good or service falls, quantity demanded of a good or service rises. They raise the price, fewer people walk through the door. We have a sale, and a sale is nothing more than lowering our price. We lower our price, we expect more customers to walk through our door. Or since that is 2021, more customers to visit our website. The law of demand is relatively straightforward. It says prices and quantity demanded, or sales, if you will, go in opposite directions. You raise your price, sales fall. You lower your price, sales go up. The law of supply, on the other hand, says that all other things being equal, as price of a good or service rises, the quantity supplied of that good or service also rises, and as the price of that good or service falls, quantity supplied of that good or service also falls. So the law of supply says price and the quantity that we as companies are willing to supply to the market, they go in the same direction. The more we can get for an item, the more likely it is that we are willing to stock that item, to put it on the shelf, to make sure that we don't run out. Because we know for every unit of that item we sell, we're making good money. But if we can't make money off that item, we don't want to stock that. We don't want to keep it in the back. We don't want it in the warehouse. We don't even want to bring it into the country. It makes no sense to us. So as firms, we know that the more we can get for an item, the more likely it is that we're going to have that item in stock. A good example of this is to go to any supermarket and look at the bread aisle. You can always find a bread aisle because it's always stocked with all these fancy breads. Right? All these $7, $8 loaf of bread. Right? But try find a regular sized loaf of white Wonder bread. It's price controlled, so the supermarkets are stuck with the price the government says it has to be. I think it's what, $2.59 or something like that. They can't charge more than that. They make no money off of selling this item. And if you leave it up to them, they would never put it on the shelf, except that, you know, the government has inspectors that come around to check, make sure you're supposed to put at least a certain amount of this bread on the shelf. Apart from that, you would never put it out. But of course, all these other fancy breads, oh yeah, man. Don't let a customer says, oh, they feel in the mood for pumpernickel, and you can charge that customer $8, $9, $10 for that loaf of bread. You can send one little boy in the back to see if they can find a loaf of that pumpernickel for that customer. So the law of demand says price and quantity demanded go in opposite directions. The law of supply says price and quantity supplied go in the same direction. All right. Just again to remind ourselves, what are kind of things that affect demand? So we know a change in price, right, which accounts for 80 to 90% of our decisions about whether or not we're going to buy a product or service. But a change in the amount of a good or service that customers are willing to consume, and if that change is based solely because of price, we refer to this as a change in quantity demanded. That's why you hear me talk a lot about quantity demanded when we talk about price, because if the amount of an item that consumers want to purchase, and that's based solely on price, we refer to that as a change in quantity demanded. And if we were to graph this relationship, we would see it as a movement along the demand curve. However, if instead customers are choosing to consume an item based on any other reason or variable, yeah, sometimes people what we call impulse purchase. That's why we as businesses, we put some of these things right up front by the cash register to catch people's eye just when they're at the cash register, impulse purchases. And that usually because, people got last little couple of dollars in their pocket, they see that something that catches their eye. And because it catches their eye, they buy it, even though if they really spend time and stop and think about it, it is outrageously expensive. So income. We also see that people's purchases don't always have to do with price. Sometimes it has to do with the price of another good. For example, if you go into the supermarket and as a regular, and you got kids, and regularly go in and you pick up your Aunt Jemima pancake batter and your syrup, and you put them in your cart and you go home and you have pancakes and whatever for the kids. But you go into the food store and they have raised the price of the batter to the point where you suck your teeth and say, hell no, no way, it ain't gonna happen. If you are not going to buy the batter because the price too high, do you really need to buy the syrup? The answer is no. You have no reason to buy the syrup because you're going to buy the batter, regardless of the price of the syrup. So your consumption of the syrup has changed, even though nothing changed about the price of the syrup. Your consumption of the syrup changed because your choice to purchase the batter changed. So here we talk about price of substitutes and complementary goods. In that case, the pancake batter and the pancake syrup are said to be complementary goods. We consume them together. On the other hand, let's say you normally put a piece of fruit in your child's lunch pail, back in the day when kids used to actually go off to school, and your child liked apples, so you normally get apple, but you go into the food store and the price of apple gone through the roof. And you said, you know what you're gonna do? You're not gonna not put a fruit in your child's lunch pail because you're a good parent and they need the vitamin C or whatever it is, or they can trade with a friend, throw in the garbage, whatever kids do with these things. So instead of putting an apple, you go and you get some oranges because the price of oranges didn't change, but the price of apple went through the roof. So you switch from apples to orange. And of course you make up some excuse for your child, but that's neither here nor there. In that case, then apples and oranges are substitutes. We can substitute one for the other if the price changes. So we find ourselves buying more oranges because we bought less apples. The price of oranges didn't change, but we're buying more oranges because we're substituting away from apples and into oranges because they raised the price of apples. And then it goes on. Population, tastes and preferences, which you know is driven by advertising. Taxes, transfers, expectation of future prices. It's very simple if you're talking about population. The more people interested in buying a product, the more demand for that product is going to go up. When we had COVID last year, 2020, when we first had lockdown, we saw this huge spike in demand for liquor, alcohol, because a lot more people staying at home doing nothing. More people at home doing nothing, more people at home want to drink because, you know, you're stuck home with the husband and kids, you know, no place to go, can't go outside. Minutes tell you can't walk around your neighborhood, nothing else to do but drink. Taste and preferences, which is driven by advertising. Whether we want to accept this or not, it is a fact that, particularly, let's say, we as Bahamians, we call all denim jeans. Right? Even though jean is a brand name, the jean company, jean denim company, we call all denim jeans. Don't ask me why, that's just what we do. We call all sport utility vehicles, all SUVs, we call them Jeeps. And of course, the Jeep company is very happy that you're calling everything Jeep because their name is out there all the time. But the fact of the matter is, you know, they're not all Jeeps. You know. And you can go on. There's lots and lots of things we do. Dish detergent, right? We call all bleach, Blanco. We call all cleanser an Ajax, and it goes on. And it goes much further, and you said, okay, well, Mr. Matt, that's just simple stuff. It goes much deeper. Think about it, let's say you're married. If you're married, I can almost guarantee you that your engagement ring was diamond. Why? Because in this part of the world, that is the Western Hemisphere, Canada, the US, North and South America, the Caribbean, and Western Europe, 99% of all engagements are with a diamond engagement ring. But that wasn't always the case. And in fact, that was the result of a deliberate marketing campaign by a diamond mining company out of South Africa called Beers. And it was so successful, tell her you'll marry her all over again. Diamond is the hardest substance to prove your love for this woman forever and ever, amen. And if you really love her, you're going to spend 2 months' salary on this diamond just to show how much you love her, and you're going to spend until it hurts. It's an enormously successful marketing campaign to the point where, you know, even if your girlfriend or your I guess she'd be fiance, tell you she wants her birthstone as engagement ring, ask her 10 different times to make sure, and then you get the diamond engagement ring anyway, just in case. That's how successful our tastes have changed due to advertising. Taxes and transfers are relatively straightforward. If the government raises taxes, so let's say they increase VAT, they've taken more money out of your pocket, so clearly you cannot buy as much stuff as you could before. So your demand for goods and services have gone down, not because the price changed, but because you got less money to spend. Right? Because government take more money out of your pocket. Transfers is government giving you money for free. Think national insurance. No, when I say national insurance, I mean national insurance board. For example, if you're a female and you're going to get yourself knocked up, okay, sorry, and you choose you and your husband to bring a loving child into this world. You then go to NIB, go up to the office and say, I had a baby, give me money. And they will give you money because you had a baby. Heaven forbid, somebody died. Go to national insurance, listen, my husband died, give me money. That's called a transfer. You get money from the government for nothing. Expectation future prices, this is one that we're familiar with, even though we don't give it too much thought, is the idea is that we make decisions about what we expect prices going to be in the future. If we expect the price of a product to go up come this weekend, then we have every incentive to make that shopping now, to increase our purchase of that good now before they raise the price. So here you have an increase in demand for a product even though the price didn't change. Demand went up because we expect the price to change sometime down the road. The reverse is also true. If we expect price to fall in the future, we would defer consumption now and wait and catch that sale. So, in short, a change in the consumption of a good or service that is due solely to a change in any other variable besides the price is referred to as a change in demand. And if we were to graph this, we would see this as a shift in the demand curve. Okay? All of this is stuff we've seen before, should have seen before, even though we may have to test our memory in terms of going back to our macroeconomic days. Hi, Dominique. All right. Similarly, we talk
Hello,
about,
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
oh, that's fine. Because I saw a lot of familiar names, but I guess we'll see. Okay. The same story is when we talk about determinants of supply. In addition to price, there are a lot of other variables that affect our willingness. Because remember now, we're looking at this from the perspective of the firm. There are a lot of things that's going to affect our willingness to supply a good or service to the market. Right? And one of them certainly is the price. And we talked about that previously. The more we can get for an item, the more likely it is that we're going to be willing to supply that item to the market. That's why you have right now any and everybody trying to sell plywood, because they know they can sell plywood for a lot more now during hurricane season than what they could have sold it for 6 months ago. So what else? If our costs, of inputs, whether we're talking our labor costs, whether we're talking our material costs, whether we're talking our utility costs, right? If the price of our inputs, the cost in our production process, if that goes down, we now have additional funds that we can now shift into increased production or increased sales or increased marketing to boost demand for our product, which means it boosts our sales. So if there's a change in input prices, we are now in a position to change the amount that we're able to supply to the market. Right. Similarly to demand, if there's a change in the price of associated goods, that's going to affect what we're willing to supply to the market. But for us, it's just the opposite. Let's go back to our example of the pancake batter and pancake syrup. Right? From the consumer's perspective, we said they are complementary goods. You consume them together. So if I am running my store and I see that the price of pancake batter is going up, right, because there was an increase in price from my from my wholesaler, or increase in price from my importer. But the result is that I have had to raise the price of my product, my pancake batter. Right? What do I do with the price of my pancake syrup? Remember, I'm the firm. All right? We're the ones, we know that, if they're not going to buy the syrup, the batter, they're not going to buy the syrup. Right? So if they see the price of the batter's gone up, the likelihood is that they're not going to buy, if they don't buy the batter, they're not going to buy the syrup. So why not raise the price of the syrup too? So that in fact, when customers do come in, they don't see, they saw last week, there was a 20-cent difference between the batter and the syrup. This week, they still see a 20-cent difference between the batter and the syrup. But that 20 cents difference is on a much higher price for both the syrup and the batter. Anyway, a lot of other things like that we're going to talk about. How do firms do things that they do and price the way they do price? Number of supplies, if there are more people supplying liquor, then more liquor is being supplied. If another church open up to your corner, then more church services happening to your corner. Regulations, on the other hand, is a different story. Regulations are imposed by government. And if government imposes too much regulation on us as a firm, that really impacts our ability to supply good or service to the market. Because we spend so much time and effort and money dealing with government regulations, that is money that could have been better spent producing more goods and services for the consumer. So regulations, the increased regulations, reduces the amount that we're willing to supply to the market. And if we can reduce the amount of regulations government is imposing on us as businesses, we would be in a position to supply more to the market. Similarly, in terms of taxes and subsidies, if they tax us more, clearly we cannot supply as much to the market because the government is taking so much money out of us, out of our pockets, money that would have been spent on increasing the amount we were going to put out there for people to buy. Subsidies, on the other hand, if we said transfers is free money to individuals, subsidies is free money to businesses. Subsidies is money that government gives businesses for free to do the things that a business would not otherwise have done. For example, if we think about Bahamas Air, government provides Bahamas Air with an incredible amount of subsidy, but the justification is that otherwise Bahamas Air would not find it worth its while to supply airline services to these far-flung family islands with a couple of people. Government says that I will give you money, and I will continue to give you money every year on the condition that you fly to these places on a regular basis. Otherwise, it would not be worth it to Bahamas Air, and they would not supply those markets. So subsidies increases supply. On the other hand, if there's a reduction in subsidies or an elimination of subsidies, then that will lead to a reduction in the supply of that good or service to the market. An expectation of future prices applies to companies just as much as it applies to consumers, but again, in the opposite direction. If we expect, we being the business person, if we expect prices to go up in the future, then we want to supply less now, and we want to wait until the prices go up so that we can then take advantage of that higher prices. So we can now sell our goods at that higher prices. You see this quite often with service stations. They would very much like to wait until the higher price gasoline comes in so that they can now sell all of that gas at a higher price, not just the stuff that came in, but the stuff that's in the ground. Unfortunately for them, the Ministry of Works has inspectors that come around and check how much gas you have in your tank in the ground, and factor that in when they're looking at pricing the existing gas coming in. They got burned a couple of times, and then we could tell you a couple of stories if and when we have time. Okay. That's demand and supply, and the determinants of demand and supply. Okay, all of this is really reminding ourselves, playing catch up with our macro stuff. Market equilibrium. Our very clear and precise definition, a market is said to be in equilibrium when quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, such that there is no pressure for price to change. All right. Quantity demanded must be equal to quantity supplied, and nobody's getting shared out. There's no pressure for price to change. Two other definitions that we want to make sure that we have in the back of our minds. The first is our definition for shortage, and then the definition for a surplus. A shortage, also known as excess demand, is a condition prevailing in the marketplace when you have quantity demanded exceeds quantity supplied. People want to buy more of this item than what is available. In that case, you would expect prices to begin inching up. Because if demand exceeds supply, there are some people who don't want to get shared out, and they're going to be willing to pay a little extra to make sure that they're not the ones that got shared out. Our calculation for shortage is quantity demanded minus quantity supplied at whatever this new price is. All right. And surplus, on the other hand, is also known as an excess supply. And a surplus is a condition prevailing in the marketplace such that quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded, which puts pressure on prices to fall. If you find that week after week, you're putting more and more on the shelf, and you're finding that come the end of the week, you still have stock left over, people are not buying everything that you want to sell, you're stuck with excess supply, excess inventory, whatever word we want to use to describe it. The point is that we have put more out there than people want to buy. If that's the case, then one of the first things we tend to do is we have a little sale. And we said earlier, a sale is nothing more than a decrease in the price. So what you're trying to do then is the prices is going to continue to come down. You're going to continue to have a sale until more people come into the store to soak up this excess supply that you have. So a surplus is calculated by subtracting the quantity demanded from the quantity supplied. So it's QS minus QD. And again, both the QS and the QD is what is prevailing at this new price. You would have seen this before from your macro days. If you're talking about market equilibrium, we can look at a graph of demand and supply, and we can see approximately where market equilibrium occurs. So given that both quantity demanded curve, which is the one on the left, furthest left, and the quantity supplied curve, which is the one furthest on the right, both show the relationship between price and quantity, then in fact we can combine them on the same graph to produce a total view or a holistic view of the market. And whether these two lines cross or the intersection of these two curves identifies the unique quantities and price. Why do I have will? Oops, or what did I do? I'll fix that. Somebody's going to remind me to fix it. No, let me fix it now. What did I do, ladies and gentlemen? I did something. Okay, here we are. The intersection of these two curves identify the unique quantities and price which will satisfy both consumers are the one who are demanding this product, and us as firms, because we're the ones who are supplying this product. So where those two lines cross, we end up with a certain price and a certain quantity at which both customers and us as company owners, we're both happy, we're both satisfied, we're both fulfilled. So we can just look at a graph and see where the two lines cross and say, okay, fine. But if we wanted to find out like numbers, then we need to be able to determine market equilibrium mathematically. And again, you would have done this in your macro days. So we would have recognized or recall from our macro days that both the quantity demand curve and the quantity supply curve are constructed using their functions, the quantity demand function and the quantity supplied functions. We would also recall that these functions were described as being perfectly describe and define the curves. When we said perfectly describe and define these curves, it means the function tells us everything about the curves. The function tells us where the curves touches the axes. So if you look at the demand curve, for example, this is the one that has the function Q equals 30 minus 3P. That function tells us where that curve touches the horizontal line and where it touches the vertical line. And it also tells us how steep or how shallow that line is. That curve, that function should tell us everything we need to know about that curve. Similarly, the supply function Qx equals 2P should tell us everything we need to know about that supply curve. So then, if we use those functions to get those curves, we said those curves tell us everything about those functions, there must be some relationship between the curves and the functions. So we said, listen, market equilibrium, we know, we can see it, we can see where the lines cross. Where the lines cross, that is where market equilibrium is. So if the two lines intersect to form market equilibrium, where the two curves that made up those lines intersect, that should also give us market equilibrium. So mathematically, we know that both the curves and the functions represent the same relationship between price and quantity. It's just two different ways of looking at the same information. So graphically, the intersection of the two curves determine market equilibrium. Likewise, the mathematical intersection of the two functions should allow us to determine market equilibrium. We said somehow we need to find the equivalent, because we said where the two curves cross is market equilibrium. So we need to find the equivalent of the two functions crossing. All right, where am I? I lose my spot. All right. So how do you go about finding market equilibrium mathematically? There are 4 steps to this, and you should have done this in your macro class. If certainly the person who took macroeconomics with me would have done this a lot. The steps. First things first. Right? When you have 2 functions that describes 2 curves, what you're in essence trying to do is find a Q that's going to be the same in both of those functions, and a P that's going to be the same in both of those functions. So you're trying to find a Q and a P that's going to solve both of those functions at the same time. In mathematics, this is called solving a system of simultaneous equations. I'm sure you've come across, if not in macro, all the way back to your high school days. So to solve a system of simultaneous equations, first things first, you set one equation equal to the other. Our two equations, our quantity demand equation and our quantity supplied equation. So step one says we set both equations, QD equal to QS, and that should allow us to solve for P. This will allow us to find the unique market clearing price for which quantity demanded will be exactly equal to quantity supplied. If we find that P, we would have found the one P, the only P, the unique P, that would be the market clearing price. At that price, consumers happy. At that price, we're happy as owners. But to find out how much consumers want to buy at that price, we have to take that P and plug it, substitute it into our demand equation. So we substitute a P star into our demand equation, and that will allow us to determine quantity demanded. We take that same market clearing price, that same P star, and we substitute it into our quantity supplied equation, and that's going to allow us to solve, to determine exactly how much we are willing to supply to the market at that price. If we find that when we plug it into our demand equation or we plug it into our supply equation, we came up with the same answer, then we know we are at market equilibrium. We found a price, a one single solitary only unique price that's going to allow quantity demand to be exactly equal to quantity supply, which means for us, we stock our shelf on Tuesday and we know come Monday night, everything that we put on the shelf, we were able to sell. In addition, we had no customers came in wanting to buy who couldn't find. We didn't run out and we didn't have any excess left over. That's what it means to be at market equilibrium and finding that one price. Okay. So then, let's do this as an example. Let's see if we can find that P star and our Q star, our equilibrium quantity, using the steps we outlined. The first step we said is we set the two equations equal to each other. And that should allow us to solve for P star. So we said QD equal to QS. QD, if we look at our equation, next to our line, we said our demand equation that goes along with that demand curve is QD equals 30 minus 3P. So I put that down. And I said, okay, we set that equal to our quantity supplied equation. And we go and we see that our quantity supplied equation is QS equal to 2P. So we end up with 30 minus 3P is equal to 2P. Well, that looks fairly simple algebra. Since I don't know about you, but as I keep telling people, I like my prices to be positive. So I'll take that negative 3P and move it on the other side of the equal sign. And I know that if I move something from one side of the equal sign to the other side of the equal sign, the sign is going to change. So that negative 3P, when I move it over, it becomes positive 3P. The 2P I ever had on that side, so that stays there. I end up with 30 equal 2P, which was there from before, plus the 3P that I just moved over. So I end up with 30 equals 5P. That means P equals 30 divided by 5. And now I know my market clearing price, or my P star, is $6. I know at a price of $6, I will be able to sell all that I want to sell without any leftovers. No excess in inventory at the end of the week, and no customers coming complaining about me running out. So no shortage, no surplus. At P star, I know that's the one unique market clearing price. Fine, you said, okay, now that you know what price you're going to charge, how much will actually be sold at that price? How much will consumers want to demand at that price? How much are you willing to supply at that price? Well, that's where steps 2 and steps 3 come in. Step 2 says to find out how much my customers are going to want to buy at that price, I substitute my P star into my quantity demand equation. So I start with my quantity demand equation. I always like to put on my equation first, so I don't lose my way and do something silly. So my demand equation is Q equals 30 minus 3P. But I now know that I am not dealing with any ordinary P. I'm dealing with P star. I'm dealing with the market clearing price, the equilibrium price that I just calculated from previously. And I know I did that, and that turned out to be 6. So I stick 6 there. So now I have my quantity demand is 30 minus 3 times P star. And P star is 6. 3 times 6 is 18. So now I know my quantity demand is 30 minus 18, which is 12. So I know at a price of $6, my customers are going to want to buy 12 units, 12 boxes, 12 cases, 12 pallets, 12 bags, whatever it is, 12. That's what they want to buy. That's what will be demanded at a price of $6. Okay, that's what they want. But am I willing to supply 12 at the price of $6? Well, the only way to find out is to take that same P star, that market clearing price, that equilibrium price, and put it into our supply equation and see what happens. So I would then substitute my P star into my quantity supplied equation and see what comes out. So I bring down my quantity supplied equation so I don't lose my way and do something silly. But now I know I'm not dealing with any ordinary P. I'm dealing with P star, that equilibrium price, that market clearing price that I calculated a few steps earlier. And I remember I calculated that, and that was $6. So I plug that $6 in, and I see my quantity supply is 2 times 6. 2 times 6 is 12. So now I know I am more than happy to supply 12 units, 12 boxes, 12 cases, 12 pallets, 12 bags, whatever it is, 12. So now I've worked out my equilibrium price, my market clearing price is $6, and at $6, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, which is equal to my equilibrium quantity. So QD is equal to QS, which is equal to Q star, and I know that is equal to 12 units. So isn't that wonderful? I know I can now, I've used my demand equation, used my supply equation, and I put them together and I found market equilibrium. And equilibrium in this market is when the price is at $6 and people will want to buy, and I'm happy to sell 12 units. But that's certainly not the end of the story, because sometimes things don't go the way you want it to go. Occasionally, we have a market that is in disequilibrium. So before we begin talking about how a market can be in disequilibrium, we need to make sure we understand what is an efficient market. Because equilibrium and efficiency are not necessarily the same thing. A market is said to be efficient if it executes all potential transactions that would benefit a buyer, a seller, or any third party affected by the transaction. So efficiency says all potential transactions are executed, buyer, seller, and anybody who is affected by the transaction. Because there are people who may be affected who are not directly involved. Right. That's where we have the externality issues come in. Market is also said to be efficient if it reaches that outcome without any bureaucratic coordination. That is, no government or government agency or anyone else, getting involved. That is simply buyers and sellers acting in their own self-interest. Buyers looking to get the best deals they can, sellers looking to make the most money they can, everybody acting in their own self-interest, producing an efficient outcome. This is called the invisible hand by economist Adam Smith, Nobel Prize winner Adam Smith, going all the way back to 1929, I believe. Also, markets said to be efficient if there are no externalities or spillovers, either positive or negative. Now, this is different than equilibrium because a market can be equilibrium if a government forces to be equilibrium. But it wouldn't be efficient because efficiency requires no intervention by any authority, just buyers and sellers going about doing their business, and the best outcome comes out. In addition, efficiency requires that there are third parties should not be affected by this transaction unless they are involved in the transaction. And we have an excellent example that we're going through right now with the coronavirus pandemic. All of us were affected by something that had happened in China in 2018 that had nothing to do with us. We ain't make no money off it. Nobody consulted us from it, but yet we have to deal with the consequences of that action. We are a third party that's affected, that the buyer or the seller in wherever it was they were doing whatever they're doing, ain't nobody thought about us. So that would be considered a negative externality. We were negatively affected by whatever went down the road that didn't have nothing to do with us. We're a third party affected by that transaction. On the other hand, COVID-19 again, positive externality, we had nothing to do with the development of the follow-up vaccine. But yet we get to benefit from somebody's body, companies and governments producing this vaccine. Now, I am not getting into a discussion about vaccine or anti-vaccine and side effects or anything like that nonsense. Right? From purely economic perspective, we benefit from somebody else producing a vaccine. And we get to enjoy the benefit of that vaccine without incurring any of the costs associated with that vaccine, with the creation of that vaccine. So that has spilled over onto us. That's called a positive externality. The virus itself is a negative externality because we didn't have anything to do with it, but it's still affecting us. Okay. One of the things we said about efficiency is that there is no bureaucratic intervention. Government is not getting involved at any stage. But what happens when government does decide to put their grubby little hands on our market? That's what we're going to talk about, government intervention in markets. And the first we're going to talk about is called a price ceiling. A price ceiling occurs when a government mandates or set a maximum price for a product or service. The government said, you cannot charge more than this amount. It's called a ceiling because that's as high as it can go. You can't go no higher. You go higher in the ceiling, you're on the roof. So a price ceiling is when the government mandates or set a maximum price for a product or service. Regardless of what the market price should be, the government said, I don't care, I as the government, this is what it's going to be. And such actions by a government are generally aimed at achieving a specific objective, such as helping the poor by limiting the cost of some products or services. So we see things like rent controls, price control on bread basket items, or price control on medical care. The idea is that the market says these things should be priced at a certain amount, but the government is intervening and saying, listen, for the benefit of poor people, particularly, there are other reasons as well, we're not going to let you charge more than X amount. Yeah, you can tell me whatever, you know, horse dead and cow fat, you know, your dog gone lame and you got children to feed, whatever. All right. This is as much as you can charge, full stop. A price ceiling is a price that is fixed below the equilibrium price. Right? So in our diagram, the equilibrium price is P star. We know this. Government established a price ceiling at P. A price ceiling always, 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 always results in excess demand or shortages. Think about this for a moment. Right? At P star, we know demand is exactly equal to supply at P star. Sorry. So what happens according to the law of demand is the price falls. According to the law of demand, if price falls, quantity demanded goes up. If price falls, quantity demanded goes up. So then we would expect then, let's look at the very bottom, I don't know what you call that thing, at the price of P. Right? If you look at the dashed line, the horizontal dashed line, the price of P, you can see where it touches the quantity supplied curve. And then what we did, we drop a perpendicular or drop a line straight down to the horizontal axis. And you can see then at where that same horizontal line touches the demand curve. And we see there's this distinct difference, and the distance between when the price fell, we of course are willing to supply less and less to the market, because that's why, you know, for price control items, when government tells us these are breadbasket items and you can't charge more than X number of things, we have very few of those on our shelves, and we only have them on our shelves because y'all force us to put them on our shelf. Go into the food store, let's say food store, they stock on a Tuesday. Go into a food store on a Wednesday or Thursday. See if you can find, for example, single ply white toilet paper. No ripples, no wrinkles, no crinkles, no aloe, none of that stuff. All right. I'm talking about, you know, the single ply thin stuff that you can practically see through. Yeah, that they charge what, 59 cents for, or is it 69 cents now? You know, kind of toilet paper where you roll over and over and over and over and over and over and over. You use half the roll, you know, for one sitting. Yeah, that. All right. I can guarantee you Tuesday, the supermarket will put only as much as government insists that they put on the shelf. And as soon as that's sold out, they ain't putting no more, forget it, try again next week. Because at a lower price, a lot of people who cannot afford the fancy stuff gonna come in and buy it because it's cheap. And even people who could afford it are gonna buy it just in case, if things run out, you know, hurricane season stocking up, whatever, demand goes up. Demand goes up, supply goes down. We're not willing to supply much of this item to the market. The result is always going to be a shortage. Similarly, rent control apartments in Nassau. There's a waiting list at Department of Housing because there's such a demand for it, and very, very few apartment owners want their apartments to be part of that program. And even those who are in the program, apartment owners, they want to get out of the program. Because once they get out of the program, so they now can charge whatever they want for their apartments. So what they normally do then is that, let's say you got talked into, you know, putting your apartment, your duplex, your triplex, your quadplex in this program. Well, you do zero maintenance. Something break, it's they break. Yeah. You do zero security. You do, no gardening, what you call it? No weeding. Bush can grow from height to height. The result is you end up with a rundown apartment. And it turns out to be so disgusting. Oh, nobody wants to rent my apartment. I'm sorry. The government gets mad with you, yank your apartment off the list. Whatever am I going to do? They took my apartments away off their list. Well, then, now I fix it up and I'm off the list. I can charge P-star for my apartments now. Right. So, price ceilings always result in excess demand or shortages. So government will intervene to try and protect poor people, generally speaking, by imposing a limit on prices. Government intervening in the market always results in excess demands or shortages. Right. What about if government decides to set minimum prices? This is called a price floor, because that's as low as you can go. Government won't let you go any lower. A price floor occurs when the government mandates or set a minimum price for a product or service. Why would they do this? They would do this if they're hoping to achieve a specific objective, such as providing support for a specific industry while it develops and matures. They do this by ensuring that persons in those industries earn what they determine. What's cut off? Anyway, something's cut off. Anyway, what is determined to be an acceptable income. So you see this in terms of minimum wage is an excellent example. Right? Government is saying to businesses, to us, right, you cannot pay these people less than X amount. Right? I'm going to tell you that minimum wage is $125 a week, and you cannot pay these people less than $125 a week. Full stop. End of story. I don't want to discussion. Governments also provide things like price support programs, like our packing house system. The packing house system, if you're not familiar with it, you have farmers, particularly in the Family Islands. Right? Government says, let's say you're growing onions, and government says, I am willing to pay X amount for a bag or bushel of onions, regardless of what the market price is. The market price may be $2 a bushel, but I am willing to pay $5. You bring whatever you have made, whatever you've grown to the packing house, and you will get $5 a bushel regardless. So the government has set a minimum price for this item. All right. So similarly to a minimum wage. And very often governments do this instead of saying directly giving money to farmers. It amounts to the same thing, but we're not giving money to farmers. We are helping them, encouraging them to grow. And sometimes this has had incredibly perverse effects. There is a program in the EU, in the European Union, called the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP. All right. And something similar in the US too, but they pay farmers, they establish a minimum price for farm product, for a whole host of farm products. One of the sort of examples that you hear a lot is the whole butter thing. So the EU has established a support program in the budget. We have X amount of money that we've allocated to purchase butter from butter producers. And it's well above the market price. So it's a price P as opposed to what we have here at P star. And so you have butter producers produce butter, a lot of butter, a hell of a lot of butter, because the more butter I produce, I'm making all kinds of money. I get a guaranteed price for my butter. So you end up with the EU with an enormous excess of butter. You know, and you hear things like a butter mountain, where that is so much butter being stored. Consumers don't want that amount of butter, but the producers continue to produce it because they get to sell it at this very high price. The US has a similar policy, and it's even more perverse in that they pay farmers not to farm. I will pay you X amount of thousands of dollars for every quarter of an acre that you do not farm. And tell me how that makes sense. Anyway, continuing. So a price floor is a price that is fixed at a level above the equilibrium price. And a price floor always results in excess supply or surpluses. A price floor always results in excess supply or surpluses. Right? And that sounds very economic until you convert that to jobs. And when government imposes increases at minimum wage, right? When we said excess surpluses or excess supply, that means excess workers. Whenever there is an increase in minimum wage, it always leads to unemployment. Think about it now. You are a firm. Remember now, we're looking at this from the perspective of business. I already have people working for me for minimum wage. They're working for me at a rate that I think that they are worth to me. That's what I'm paying them. Because why would I pay you more than I think you're worth to me? So we start off on the position where the people I have working for me, the amount I'm paying them is what I think they're worth to me. And government now comes along and says, you got to pay them more. Well, then they're not worth it to me anymore. So what ends up happening, whenever we have an increase in minimum wage, you have people at this very lowest end of the scale, a lot more of them are let go. But it gets worse. I already let this one go because government tell me I need to pay you $150 a week, and I think you only worth $125 a week. So, sorry, Jack, you got to go. But the question is, do I now go out and hire people at $150 a week? No. So not only am I letting go people, because minimum wage said I have to pay them more and I don't want to do that, but I'm also not hiring anybody else at this higher wage rate either. So you have more people being let go and fewer people being hired. The ultimate result is always, always, always increase in unemployment. And it's not that governments don't know this, right? But the rationale for government, any government, and I'm not necessarily talking about our particular government or any political persuasion, the rationale for any government of increasing minimum wage, knowing that there's going to be an increase in unemployment, is that they're saying the number of people who will become unemployed is more than offset by the people who will remain working but will be making more money. So governments will weigh that balance and said, okay, well then, you know, what we'll do, maybe we'll increase unemployment benefit for these people who got laid off, you know, but overall we think it's a positive for the economy as a whole. But let's be clear. Minimum wage or a price floor always results in excess supply or surpluses. Okay, so then, few minutes ago, we calculated equilibrium price, the market clearing price, and we calculated quantity demanded and quantity supplied at that price. So we had a market that was in equilibrium, and we found out what was the equilibrium price and what was the equilibrium quantity for this market. Right. Now, government comes along. Says, yeah, I know the market says the price is $6. We don't care, we's government. Right. We are saying you can't charge more than $4. Question for you. If government comes along and insists that they're imposing a price of $4 for this product, do we expect there to be is this a ceiling, a price ceiling, or a price floor? You have a price that's lower than an equilibrium price. Let's scroll up 2 places. A price that's below the equilibrium price is a price ceiling. Government imposes a $4 price for this product, even though the market price is $6. So that price is a price ceiling because it's lower than the market price. So if the price is lower than the market price, do we expect there to be a surplus or shortage? Well, the law of demand says if price falls, we know demand is going to go up. But the law of supply says if price falls, quantity supplied is also going to fall. So at a price that's lower than the equilibrium price, we should expect demand to go up, supply to go down, and the result, according to our understanding, a price ceiling always results in excess demand or a shortage. So when government forces a price to be lower than the market says the price ought to be, the result is going to be a shortage in the market. It's called a price ceiling, and it's going to result in a shortage. Our task then is to determine how much that shortage is going to be, seeing that we figured out it's going to be a shortage. Similarly, what happens instead? Government imposes a price of $10 for this product. The market said this product is only worth $6. That's what the market says. But government says we don't care. We are willing to pay, and we insist that the price for this product is $10. It's a price that's above the equilibrium price. So we say if the price is above the equilibrium price, that's called a price floor. A price above the equilibrium price is called a price floor, and it always results in excess supply or surplus. So go back to our question then. If government imposes a price that's above the equilibrium price, we refer to that as a price floor, and we know that's going to cause a surplus in the market. Our task then is to determine how much that surplus is going to be. All right. So, shall we do that? Oh yeah, good time. It's 7:30. I have all kind of time. Shall I need a new insert. Oops. Oh, I need to insert a new slide, don't I? Okay. All right. Here's my new slide. Let me put some information on it. You know what? Let me create another one. Duplicate slide. Better have too much than not enough. Now, we were working with two equations. We said our demand equation, QD, is equal to 30 minus 3P. And our supply equation, we said, was QS is equal to, oops. Now we solved this and we found that we ended with P star equal to $6. And we end up with Q star equal to 12 units. And we know Q star, that means QD equal to 12 and QS was equal to 12. So we calculated that earlier. Now we said government did two things. The first thing government did, they lowered price to $4. And we said we think that that is going to result in excess demand or shortage. So far, so good? Now, in that case, then, we wanted to be able to calculate what this shortage is. So we need to go back and we find that to calculate a shortage, we said a shortage is QD minus QS. So what we need is that we need a new quantity at this price that government is trying to impose on the market, and a new quantity supplied at this price that government is trying to impose on the market. So can we start with, see if we can find a new quantity demanded at this new price? We know the quantity demand equation, and we always want to put the equation down first. That way we don't run into silly mistakes by misremembering the way things are supposed to be. All right. So here's our demand equation. All right. Now, this P now that we're looking at, this is the government imposed P. So we end with QD is equal to 30 minus 2 times the government P was $4. Right. So we're trying to find the demand for this product when government sticks its nose in our business and insists that we can't charge more than $4 for this item. Right. So we're at QD is equal to 20, 2 times 4 is 8. And so that QD is equal to 20 minus 8. You were going to let me just go on with this 20 here, and it's actually 30.
I actually was going to ask you, I was going to say where you got the 20 from because I was so lost.
Yeah, right, sure. Tell me, you're going to send me something else. Wait till I fix that. Oh, yeah, I was going to point that out to you, you know. And 30 minus 8 is 22. So when the price was $6, quantity demanded was 12. But now at the price of $4, quantity demanded jumped up to 22 units. What about the supply? Let's tab over here, tab. QS is equal to, according to 2P. So QS, we're using the new government P, 2 times 4 so QS so when government forced us to lower the price to $4, Sakati said, you know what? I was willing to supply 12 to the market, mind you. More than happy to supply 12 when I could get $6 for it. But now that I only could get $4, I only want to supply 8 to the market. So demand went up from 12 to 22 and supply went down from 12 to 8. All right. So then what's our shortage? Our shortage is equal to QD minus QS It's not right. Which is 22. I know you can do this in your head, but still 22 minus 8. What's 22 minus 8?
12.
No. 22 minus 8
Oh,
is
my bad,
12.
sorry. I come right there with my wrong answer.
So now we end up with a shortage of 14 units, or 14 boxes, or 14 cases, or whatever this 14 is. 14 people got shared out. When government lowered the price, demand went through the roof. Companies like us decide, thanks but no thanks. The end result is that there is a shortage of this item. All right, so what happens if government raises the price? We said raise the price to how much? Government raised the price to $10. All right, so if government raised the price to $10, let me duplicate that slide and make some corrections. So now government has raised the price to raised price to $10. Oops, I need that. And we said, we think that's going to result in excess supply. Or surplus. Which means we don't need that. We need to go get our surplus thing from up the road. Here's our surplus thingy. Okay, and let's paste it. Okay, so then, government raised the price to $10. We think that's going to result in excess supply or surplus, and we want to calculate how much that is going to be. And we do the same thing that we did before. We find out what our new demand is at this new price, and we find out what our new supply is at the new price. Right? The new price is $10. So instead of 4, let's put 10 there. And 2 times 10 is 20. And 30 minus 20 is 10. So when the price went to $10, demand went from 12 units to now 10 units. Government raised the price, and no surprise, demand fell. Because the law of demand says, if price goes up and it went from $6 to $10, you expect demand to fall. Demand fell from 12 units to 10 units. But what about supply? Right. Price went to $10. So supply went, why did you do that? Backspace. Supply went 2 times 10 is 20. Supply went, we're willing to supply a lot more to the market because government raised the price from $6 to $10. And we said that's going to result in a surplus. And a surplus is QS minus QD. So we need to flip this around. QS minus QD. If you don't flip it around, you can end up with a negative number. And since quantity can't be negative, neither can price. And our new quantity was 20. Backspace. And our new quantity demanded was 10. So we end up with a surplus of 10 units. So to calculate shortage and surplus, all we know, we stick the new price into our equations and we just simply solve them. Our formula for shortage is QD minus QS, and our formula for surplus is QS minus QD. None of this should be news to you guys. I'm sure you've all done this in your macro days, or at least some portion of it. All right. And so tonight really was intended to be a review of that stuff. Oh, I don't need this anymore, do I? Delete slide. And delete slide. But before we close out, and yeah, it's an early night tonight, oh no, it's almost 8 o'clock. Yeah, okay. Thursday. Oh, you're gonna get your first homework on Thursday. It'll be this whole demand and supply thing. So it's a review kind of stuff. We're gonna begin talking about elasticity. Elasticity by definition measures responsiveness. We've talked a lot in this class, and you would have done it in your macro class, about the law of demand and the law of supply. The law of demand says, as we raise our price, we expect to lose some sales or customers' sales. And as we lower our price, if we were to have a sale, we expect more customers to walk through our door. We understand that, and that's obvious and that's clear. Right? We know that applying the law of demand brings us to the conclusion that for normal goods, as price rises, quantity demand falls, and as price falls, quantity demand rises, all other things being equal, or ceteris paribus. But from our perspective as firms, as a company, as a store, as a shop, right, there are other things that we focus our attention on too. For us, it is sometimes more important to know, even though price and quantity go in opposite direction, they're inversely or negatively related, it is often even more important to us to know how sensitive customers are to change in the price level. We want to know if I change my price by a certain percent, how much will my sales change in percentage terms? That's elasticity. Right? And the price elasticity of demand, this is the Greek letter epsilon, but it's easier to just write it as capital E, E of D. Price elasticity of demand, E of D, measures the percentage change in quantity demanded resulting from a given percentage change in the price level. So it's percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So to calculate this, we need to calculate two sets of percentage changes. I'm sure you recall percentage change is always new minus old divided by old. Don't worry, we will go over it again on Thursday. It's new minus old divided by old. So this tells us, for example, if I increase my price by 10%, will my sales fall off by more than 10%, less than 10%, or exactly 10%? That's what I'm focusing my attention on. Just think about it now. Let's say I raise my price by 10%, but my sales only fall off by 2%. You see, it makes sense then for me, I would come out ahead, because even though I may lose a little bit of sales, I make a lot more money by raising my price. Because if I could raise my price by 10%, but only lose 2% in sales, I come out ahead. Similarly, if I lower my price by 10% and I find that my sales go up by 30%, I come out ahead. But here's the kicker. Let's say I lower my price by 20%. So I have a 20% sales, but my sales only go up by 3%. Does it make any sense for me to lower my price? Because I lower my price by 20%, but my sales only go up by 3%, my sales barely budge. So elasticity is all about trying to understand how that works. All right? Elasticity tells me how much quantity demand is going to change in percentage terms when I change my price by a certain percent. All right, so I think we're going to stop there today. Yes. And we'll pick it up exactly at 6 on Thursday. I will send out the homework. Usually it's either at class or just after class. And you have all weekend, to breeze through it because it's all demand and supply and stuff you know. And then you always have your notes to refer back to. All right. Any questions about the class or any administrative stuff before we call it a night? No? 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 No?
No.
Oh, good. All right, folks, then thank you all very much. And I will see you guys on Thursday.
Mr. Demary,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention, like how you was talking about the pancake and syrup. Like I went to Super Value and
Wait, who's
the
I?
price.
Who's I? I can't
No, that's
see.
Ashley. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. So they have the family size pancake, the same price as a small one. So everybody was getting, and also they also dropped the price in the large syrup. So you got the syrup and the pancake for the price of the small pancake that they sell.
So why do you think they would do that? Oh, no, let's say you own the store. Why would you do that?
I mean, it's a better deal than me.
No. As a store owner, you're not doing it to benefit the customer.
Oh.
That's not your job.
Probably gonna expire soon or something.
Certainly that's a possibility. Yeah.
I mean, it was it had like, you know, the expiry date was like at least like the ending, like I mean expire now, but it was earlier in the year, and like it was expiring right around this time now. So
Okay, so let's say it's not the expiry date. This is not close to expiring. So why else would you offer such a great deal to your customers?
I guess they had too many and they just wanted to,
No, no. So
no.
you're still thinking of yourself as a customer. Yeah. As a firm, you never have too many unless it's going to spoil. And neither pancake batter or syrup is going to spoil anytime soon. So no. It may be that you're looking to build some customer base. See, people who normally, you make your pancake batter with flour and sugar at home. Now you see this thing and you're going to get the real thing. And I'm thinking, as a business owner, I expose you and your children to real pancakes, and your churning let you make no flour and water no more. Yeah. See, now you got to buy pancake batter come next week when you go to the food store, all the prices return to normal. Yeah. The idea is that we have to begin looking at these from the perspective of the firm and trying to understand what the rationale behind the decisions that we would make if this was our company. Because ultimately, the firm's objective is to make money, profits, for the owners, for the shareholders, for whomever. Their job is not to make you happy unless making you happy puts more money in my pocket. But listen, we will have a lot of time to have a lot of these discussions over the next 6 weeks. All right? All right. Ooh, in that case, thank you all very much. And we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Good night. Okay.
All right. Good night.
Good evening.